So this is your roadmap to a win. And then the final thing that I do want to mention on here, this is incredibly important. We absolutely have to preserve the world's remaining tropical forests. The majority of those are Indonesia, Brazil, and Congo. There's a new mechanism that's being developed right now that is, it's called REDD. I won't get into what it is, but it's essentially a funding mechanism that helps national governments protect their their forests and preserve them over a long period of time. So how do you do that? Well, what we believe from experience is that policy is the key. Just as an example, the global energy market is a $4 trillion market, $4 trillion per year. We're not going to displace that with just extra taxes paying for extra green technologies on top of what's dirty now. You have to redirect existing investment to clean technologies. And the only way that's going to happen is with policy. The only way you get somebody to invest in a solar plant instead of a coal-fired power plant is because a policy says the coal-fired power plant is more expensive because we want it to be. Just as an example, I was at a conference a couple years ago at Goldman Sachs, and I met with a guy who was doing their solar portfolio, and he sat down the hall, because it was in their energy group, from a guy who's doing their coal portfolio. And they were friends, and they used to talk about this stuff, and the guy doing the coal said, I don't have a choice. I have to invest in coal because I have a responsibility to maximize my return. We need to pass policy so that that's no longer the case, so that those investors now say, I can't invest in coal because solar is the better option, and that's going to take policy to make it happen. We also need to do the same thing on buildings. You don't want to continue to allow people to build leaky sieves for buildings. We have to make them efficient. We need green building standards, and we need to replicate them globally. So policy creates standards for markets. Policy drives massive investments. Policy is the key to winning more than any other realm. One other thing that I wanted to show you is this sort of is the underlying cost curve behind our research. This shows you what it would take to abate 27 gigatons of carbon by the year 2030. So this is most of the amount you need for a win. As you can see, I'm going to see if I can make this thing work here. Over here, this is abatement for a profit. This is below the cost curve. So these are all things you can do and save money doing and prevent carbon from going into the atmosphere. The problem is we have incentives in this country and in many countries to waste energy. The classic example that I use here is there's a tax credit on the books for SUVs in the United States. It's something like a $50,000 write-off or whatever it is. And so people go and buy these cars because they're essentially lower cost than a more efficient car. We got to end that. We have a similar problem with our utility policy, where most utilities in this country are incentivized to build new power plants rather than invest in efficiency. We've addressed that in California by incentivizing investments in energy efficiency, investments in green technologies. We've made it work here. We need to make it work everywhere. Just a few quick examples of what I'm talking about, because I know I'm running out of time. But the power sector priorities, so the first key intervention, no new conventional coal plants. We have to stop coal. It is essentially immoral for the Western developed world to be building new coal-fired power plants in this day and age. It's wrong. We have to stop it. We have to develop carbon capture and sequestration technology. There are going to be coal plants built. They're being built in India and China. We have got to help them capture and sequester the carbon from those plants if we're going to win. We need renewable portfolio standards, and we need them everywhere. These are incredibly effective policy tools that dramatically accelerate the deployment of renewable energy. And we need to take a hard look at nuclear power. I personally am incredibly skeptical. I don't think it's viable. I think it's mostly, there's significant financial hurdles, but they are carbon neutral sources of energy, not carbon neutral, low carbon sources of energy, and we need to leave them on the table if in the event that we need them down the road. So stopping conventional coal plants, there has been a concerted effort in the U.S. Guided by a coalition of philanthropic efforts and a large group of NGOs to stop coal-fired power plants throughout the United States. They've been very effective. We need to replicate that kind of activity in Europe and in other places where they're being built. We've stopped 28 so far. I was personally involved in a couple of these in Idaho and Nevada. You can stop them. We need renewable portfolio standards, not just in the States, but nationally. One of the things that's happened as a result of this coordinated effort is that we've put a lot of pressure on Congress to enact a national renewable portfolio standard. So now we've got 28 states, including most of the largest states in the country with these standards. It's putting a lot of pressure on Congress to act. There's actually a 15% RPS pending in the energy bill, which would save 300 million tons of carbon dioxide by the year 2030. That's not trivial. That's 10% of the goal right there. Sorry, 1% of the goal right there. Same thing for cars. The Prius should be the standard, not the alternative. We need to expand our investment in rapid transit and replicate that around the globe. The EU and Japan are already way ahead of us on fuel economy. China took action this month that made their cars far more efficient than any cars built in the US. We need to do it here as well. And we need to ramp these standards up with time. And then finally, with forestry, we have got to protect and preserve the world's remaining tropical forests. There is no substitute for intact tropical forests, for the carbon sink, for the water purification, for all the other ecosystem services that they provide. This is a mandatory intervention we have to take care of. It's all got to be done in the next 10 years. And the best part is we do have time. Most of this we can do with things we already know how to do, but policy is incentivizing the wrong behavior. So with that, I guess I'm gonna wrap up just really quickly. This is a teaser of what's to come. We have found how to win the battle against global warming. It's going to take a concerted effort. It is taking a lot of global coordination. There's definitely room for optimism, but there is not a lot of time. And the efforts have to be many times larger than what they are now. So, thanks.